Welcome to the Scholars Chair. Our guest is Chair of the Karama Institute, Dr. Azizah al-Hibri. Our focus topic is: Does the Quran, holy book for Muslims, support ethno-nationalism? Dr. Azizah al-Hibri, does the Quran support ethno-nationalism is our focus question, but I want to start off with the definition of nationalism or ethno-nationalism. And I want to see if you agree, and let's see where the Quran either embraces it, supports it, or not. The definition, as I have found it to be, ethno-nationalism demands that an individual primary allegiance belongs to their specific ethnic group or nation state. Now, this is has been evaluated and assessed globally. So we're dealing with it in our tri-state area here. Now, I want to find out from you, do you agree with the definition, and is it supported by the Quran?
Before we do that, I'd like to have the definition clarified. So, does this mean that there could be other ethnic groups in the state, and but the person who shares the same ethnicity as the political state should have his or her primary allegiance to that state, so they can have a mixed society? It's not going to be an exclusive society. They're not looking forward in the future to having a society which is exclusively of a certain ethnicity and to which they have allegiance.
I think that your latter statement is what ethno-nationalism really means. It means that there are multiple ethnic groups, but I have a particular allegiance to the one that looks like me. And it is and the political apparatus and structure of the state is geared to my concerns.
So basically, it is a theory which excludes a multiplicity of ethnicities.
Absolutely.
It's exclusive. Okay, so that's what we need then to look for in the Quran. Does the Quran encourage exclusivity? Does the Quran recognize one ethnic group as better than others? Because also when you're talking about exclusivity, it implies also that you think this group is exclusive because it's better than others. So there is the issue of superiority over other groups. And so you do not want to mix with other groups in order not to dilute the wonderful gifts you have that you believe are superior to those of others.
That's exactly right.
So I would like to address two separate issues. To think that there are some groups that are superior than others, and that God also supports the view, the human view, or the Quran states something in support of that theory. So I will first argue that in Islam, the view of the humankind is one that we are all created equal. And now somebody is gonna say, wait a minute, women are not equal to men, whites are not equal to non-whites, and all these issues. And I'm not saying there are no differences. Clearly, groups, even within a group, you have differences. The question is, do these differences allow you to say that as a group, you are superior to another group, or as a human being, an individual, you're superior to others? So let me address those things by going to the Quran. So in the Quran, first of all, let's look at the principle of creation. In it, it says, and the one that you hear very often, but I'm going to quote others so that you know it's not just one thing in the Quran and we're done, okay? So it says, Ya ayyuhan nas, I'll read it first in Arabic and then in English. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير. So, O people, we created you all from a single pair of male and female and made you into nations and tribes that you may know each other. Enjoy knowing each other. Not so that you can have conflict with each other or have childish arguments about who is better.
Yeah.
Verily, I mean, the childish thing I included is not in the Arabic, but this is really the idea. You're there to befriend each other, not and know each other, not for something else. Oop. Verily, the most honored of you in the sight of God, Allah, is the one who is the most righteous of you. So righteousness is a matter not of color, not of age, not of gender. It is a spiritual thing that anybody in Islam could achieve. And as I talk to you, I will give you examples. And it goes on to say, so the person who achieves that best is closest to God. We're all ranked in terms of our piety, not something else, in closeness to God. And God has full knowledge and is well acquainted with all things. So that's really the basic verse in the Quran, which is in al-Hujurat, which is in Surah 49, and it's verse 13.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I'd like to read for you two others, at least, that have basically the same idea. And I'm not going to read the whole verse, but enough of it to get the gist of it.
Yes.
يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منها رجالا كثيرا ونساء. And I will stop here. And then it talks about piety. O people, reverence your guardian Lord who created you from a single soul. We all come from a single soul. Now, some people think that's Adam, but that's not necessarily the idea. We're talking about the nafs from which God created all of humanity.
Yeah.
So, O people, reverence your guardian Lord who created you from a single soul, created of like nature its mate, and from them twain, scattered like seeds, countless men and women. Okay, so where did the different groups come from? They all came from the same nafs,
Mhm.
which that then was in twins. I would understand it's male and female of like nature. They're of like nature, and of them you had countless men and women. These are the nations and tribes, right? God did not create all of them Arab and then they became something else, or white and then they got burnt in the sun in Africa and they became black. That's not what happened. Okay, so let's start realizing that God did this, and He's telling us about it. And in Az-Zumar 39, verse 6. He says, خلقكم من نفس واحدة ثم جعل منها زوجها. And then he continues, he created you all from a single nafs and created from it a like nature, his mate, and then the rest of humanity came as we know. So
Interesting.
one wonders why then we are different. He created us all from the same nafs. So we ought to be almost identical. I mean, identical. Why am I not like you? Forget about ethnicity, color, gender, etc. Why aren't we like stamped
Right.
one after the other, looking like each other?
Sure.
And the Quran explains it to us in Surah Ar-Rum, verse 22. And of his ومن آياته خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف ألسنتكم وألوانكم إن في ذلك لآية للعالمين. And of his signs is the creation of the earth and the diversity of your languages and your colors. Indeed, in that are signs, ayahs, signs of or miracles to those who have knowledge. And then God in Hud, Surah Hud 118 says, وَلَوْ شَاءَ رَبُّكَ لَجَعَلَ النَّاسَ أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً وَلَا يَزَالُ مُخْتَلِفِينَ. And if your Lord had willed, he could have made humankind one community. But they will not cease to differ. They will find something to differ about. So our diversity is intentional so that we get to know each other. If God had willed it for us to be all one ummah, he would have done that. It is easy for God to do that. It is kun fayakun. He says, be, and it is. It's not that difficult for him as one as humanity might find difficulty imagining. So he created us all from the same nafs, from the same essence. And he blew a breath of his soul in us. So we have something divine in us. We have spirituality. We have also the ability to think, and we can evaluate the creation of God and should be able to understand it in a better way, that it is something that should be celebrated. And it is really, what can I say? It is very childish. I am better than you are. Oh no, it's like when children fight over anything,
Right.
and each one pushes the other aside. Okay, that is not what God intended for humanity to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to continue on this. But I do have, if you ask me, like, why human beings have that intention, that inclination to feel that one is superior than the other.
That's exactly where I was going. Good.
Because why? Everybody seems to, say, I'm better than you are. But why? Wouldn't it be better to say, hey, I'm like you, let's play together?
Right.
But they don't say that. And there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
And it's a very important reason. And it's a reason that sort of underlies the tests we have in this world, how we perform, and how God looks at it in the afterlife, how we are going to be evaluated. And it all arises from the story of the fall of Iblis. So
Iblis is
Satan,
right.
in this in the US we call them Satan.
Yeah.
Now, if you remember, we just finished saying, and by the way, much of the verses I wrote, it says, I read for you, says that God created a soul and a human being, and from it, its mate. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
They're from the same substance, but some jurists argued, yes, they are from the same substance. And that's why we say it created from it its mate. But it doesn't mean, we in Islam, despite what some prophetic hadiths, how they were interpreted to mean, the Quran doesn't say that Eve was created from Adam's rib.
Right.
And the hadith, at least many jurists interpreted in a way that it is not a statement of how creation was, but an analogy about the rib to the woman in certain ways, but this is not the place here to discuss that. I just wanted to clarify this.
Sure.
So now let's find out what happened. Adam was in paradise. God had created him from clay. Everybody in heaven, like angels, jinn, these are another type of being, which is not like us, and we cannot see them, but they exist, the Quran tells us. And Iblis, by the way, or Satan, was one of the jinn. So these knew what was happening, that Adam was being created from clay. So then God, breathed of his soul into Adam and told the angels, I have created Adam, I'm bringing him in front of you, basically to introduce you to him. And when I do, you have to prostrate yourself to him. That was God's order. وإذ قلنا للملائكة اسجدوا لآدم فسجدوا إلا إبليس أبى واستكبر وكان من الكافرين. This is in Surah Al-Baqarah, number 2, verse 34. And behold, we said to the angels, bow down to Adam. And they bowed down. They are made of light, jinn, of which Iblis is made, they're made out of fire. Humans are made out of clay. And the angels have a very good nature. So God told them, bow down to Adam, and they bowed down. So, and behold, we said to the angels, bow down to Adam, and they bowed down. Not so Iblis, Satan. He refused and was haughty. He was one of those who reject the faith. Okay, he was a kafir. Why on earth did Iblis do that? So God asked Iblis. And by the way, this is reported in the Quran. And the question is reported not because God did not know what Iblis was doing. The question is really there for us to hear the answer of Iblis and to figure out that we should never do the same.
Right.
Because we will see the consequences. So in Surah Al-A'raf, verse 12, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قال ما منعك ألا تسجد إذ أمرتك قال أنا خير منه خلقتني من نار وخلقته من طين. God said, what prevented you from bowing down when I commanded you? Bowing down. He said, I'm better than he. You created me from fire and you created him from clay. I am better than him. So, for that reason, because he thought fire was better than clay, he decided it's good enough reason to refuse to obey God. Okay. What's wrong with that?
Is maybe the first statement of prejudice and discrimination.
No.
No.
I mean, it is that, but look, I mean, if it is first statement of, look what God said. قال فاهبط منها فما يكون لك أن تتكبر فيها فاخرج إنك من الصاغرين. God got very angry at Iblis. He said, get thee down from paradise. He was cursed out of paradise. It's not for you to be arrogant here. Get out, for you are one of the meanest of creatures. Why? Why just not say, oh, something milder? Why was it such a radical? Was such a radical response? Because first of all, we have to understand what is the most basic element of Islam. This really hits at the heart of Islam. So what you're asking me about hits at the heart of Islam. It's not just, oh, by the way, and the Quran says something here and something there, and so we interpret them. And no, it is fundamental. And if you don't believe in it, you're not a Muslim. So let me tell you, what is the most important concept in Islam? What is the fundamental thing you have to believe in?
God, of course. Yeah.
Huh?
You believe in God. And
in God, yes. God, Allah. How many?
One God. One God.
One God, right?
Yes.
One God. He is the all-powerful, all-knowing, all merciful, right? And that is fundamental. And if you moved from it, and that is what Surah قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد, that asserts the heart of Islam. Say there's only one God. He has no children, no parents. He is not eternal in the human sense that he is in time. He is outside time, always there, and there is none like unto him. Okay. So that means that any time you would try to associate with this God another, you would fall in what we call shirk. Shirk is associating another God with God.
Mm.
And that is not only about people who used to pray for many gods, it's also about people who are, for example, to give you an example from today, who are so committed to issues of wealth and money that they worship money. They worship gold, okay? Not in the real sense of praying for it, but their life is devoted to that, one goal. That is a form of, also, it's a form of shirk because all your devotion should be spiritual and to God. But what does this have to do with what Iblis did?
Mm.
If you have one God, then your obedience is 100% to God. And if you move away from that, okay, some of us sin, God forgive us, but God says in the Quran, I can, if I want to, forgive any sin, but I will not forgive shirk when you associate with God another God.
Yeah.
So God's will is superior. That's what it means to be a Muslim.
Mm.
Okay?
Mm.
What Iblis did is that he said, look, I am made of an element which God created that is better than the human element, which is clay. And he states that fire is better than clay. Now, how did he reach that conclusion? We don't know, because one could also argue, like some jurists argued, there are many ways we could argue that clay is better than fire. But Satan was so invested in his own element that he viewed it as superior to clay. And if it is superior, how could he possibly bow to Adam?
Mm.
Well, in doing that, he made what the jurists referred to in the past as a real big mistake in analogy and in analysis and in logic. And from that mistake that he made, he jumped to refusing to obey a direct order from God. Okay, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that is that Iblis then made his own will superior to God's will.
Mm.
And by doing that, he associated another God with God, his own will, right? So he fell into shirk. And that's something God told us he will never forget.
Mm.
Am I imagining this analysis? No, because one of my favorite scholars, al-Ghazali,
Yeah.
spoke about this. Unfortunately, I have the Arabic, but I'll translate it into English. He
Please.
says that to be arrogant before God, against God's creation. You look at God's creation and you're arrogant, you think you're better than it. He says that will lead you to be arrogant with respect to a divine order. That's what happened with Iblis, right?
Mm.
And he mentions Iblis specifically. And he said, that's what Iblis did. He said, I'm better than he is. And in that case, his arrogance was one of descent, what he was made out of. Okay. You created me. You created me from fire, and created it from Adam. You created Adam from clay, and that prevented him from prostrating himself. Something that God ordered him to do, or to bow. Something that God ordered him to do, and the beginning of all this and why God cursed Iblis and threw him out of paradise, the very first thing in this was arrogance. Once you start having arrogance, then it will cause you your halak, your destruction. Okay?
Mhm.
And he said, anybody who thinks he is better than his brother, or who looks down at his brother and does not give him his due, he has shown arrogance as between him and the creation of God. And he who is too arrogant to submit to God and be humble in obeying him and his prophets, then he has been arrogant as to God and to the prophets. And therefore, this is the falling into shirk, which God will not forgive.
You
So,
you you have given us excellent support from the Quran, and this is primarily what the entire topic is about. But I wanted to find out from you, is there any historical declaration by the Prophet Muhammad condemning tribalism? Do you have any examples of that?
well, yes, that was going to be my next
Of
point.
course. I'm doing well.
But first, I will tell you about the behavior of the prophet. Uh, First of all, uh, he at home, he actually swept the floor of his home. We're talking now about arrogance, whether in terms of, gender, women should do certain things and men others, and other things. Remember, he was living in a society that just emerged from Jahiliyyah. Okay. They had also slaves at that time, which the Prophet came to uh, give us an education that every human being is free, is born free, and how you get out of this. That's a whole other discussion that would be nice one day to talk about, because many people have sort of looked only at the uh, edges of this in the Quran and not have gotten into the important theoretical aspects. So here he used to like he it isn't he came from Quraysh. And people would say that he had money at one point, not when he was an orphan, but at one point, he had money, but he never kept it to himself. He always shared the money. And so, for example, he would milk the cow. He would fix his shoes because they would fall apart, or his clothes. He would sew the hole in them. This is the Prophet Muhammad. How many millions, a billion something in the world follow him, right? That's what he used to do, and we should talk about it. They had servants at that time, people who are in their house and are being supported. He would eat with them and with the servant in the house, and he would take over his task and he would do it. Like when they have to. Make flour, from the wheat. He would do it because he would see that the guy is tired. So he did not have a class distinction, and he would go to this market and he would buy what they needed at home, and he would put it in his hand or tie it to his tobe, and he will go home like that, and he wouldn't say, I am the prophet, or help me carry it. I mean, he was more modest than you and me, if you want us to tell the truth. Okay. And I'm getting this from Ibn Hisham, who also is noticing things from his own days. Probably, if he knows what we are concerned about, he would have cast some of this in a different language. But for example, he says, whenever he is going down in the market or somewhere and he sees people, he's the first to greet. He greets people first. He doesn't wait for them. Oh, let's see if they're going to greet me. And he said he did this with everybody, a young person, an old person, a black person, a red person, a free person, a slave. You see what this is saying from Ibn Hisham, from the days of the Prophet when they didn't have some of the issues we are now talking about.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
But I think more important than that, who were those people around the Prophet?
Mhm.
Whatever writers have done about the history of the Prophet and Islam, and whatever they emphasized and forgot not to emphasize something else because they didn't realize how important it was for their time.
Mhm.
Nobody could minimize in any way the importance of Bilal, Mu'adhin al-Rasul.
Mhm.
He called for prayer. And the story of Bilal is a very touching story. He was uh, he was black. I think he was Ethiopian,
Yeah.
and I think the story I'm going to tell you. I don't know. He was a slave then, or he was liberated already. But he was being tortured by the people with whom he was to move away from Islam, and he kept saying "Wahid, Ahad, Ahad, Ahad." There's only one God. And then he came and joined Islam. The Prophet liked him a lot, and he made him the mu'adhin, the one who calls to prayer, among the Muslims. Who was upset? Quraysh.
With Christ's family, yeah.
Even though the Prophet was from Quraysh,
Mhm.
they're upset. Quraysh, was like the very special family in Mecca.
Mhm.
And they said, how is it that the Prophet or Muhammad allows this black guy to go up the Kaaba with his bare feet and call for prayers? It should be somebody very special who comes near the Kaaba. And now he has this black guy at the top of the Kaaba and he's calling for prayers. What did the Prophet say when they was asked about Bilal? That he heard his footsteps leading into paradise, others.
Very, very.
Yeah. So
I-
if you want to be a Muslim, you should have the heart to believe that you're not better than others. Definitely not in color, because I just gave you a bunch
Right.
of stories from the Prophet and from the Quran. And if you insist on it, then you've fallen into shirk and forget about being a Muslim.
So,
It's really amazing, and there is a verse I wanna tell you about. Here's here's another outlook at what happens in Islam.
mhm.
I said that the most important concept, unique concept, and God is not a concept, but as I just lectured to Karama students, I said our tongue is unable to talk about God in the proper way because our language does not have the proper concepts to talk about Him because God His reality is beyond us. All we know is our world. And so whatever words we use, we pick it from our world. So sometimes I feel like when I'm talking about God, uh, I'm messing up because it doesn't really describe the divine reality. But if we understand that and excuse ourselves for trying to talk in human terms about the divine reality, which is superior to everything, and God tells us He created the world, then the question becomes, how did God create the world? God tells us His creation is instantaneous if He wants to. He says, kun fayakun, all right? But the important thing that I'm heading towards is that God created the world on the basis of due balance. That's the concept upon which the whole world is really built. And there are like many verses, but I didn't prepare to read those for you, which says the sun cannot overtake the moon, and everything is in due balance, not only in the heavens, but on earth. And if you mess up the balance, you have problems, serious problems. Because God, being the single creator, is the one who then created a world that he understands fully all the regulations in it and all the rules. So he's telling you, this is what I created. If you want to mess it up, something wrong will happen. And we see this, for example, in environmental law. If you mess it up, we see what happens. But on the human side, not just our interaction with nature, on the human side, he says, I also created for you certain rules. And the rule is that ألا تطغوا في الميزان. You may not transgress due balance. This is, I think it is in Surah 55, verse 8. What does that mean? ألا تطغوا في الميزان. This balance, don't upset it. But not just don't upset it because you are negligent. It says طغيان. تطغوا comes from طغيان. طغيان comes from the word oppression. It
Mm.
comes from the word zulm. Like being like a dictator, somebody who is forcing for his will unfairly. If you try to upset this mizan, then you pay the price in this world.
Yes. Sister Azizah, you have you have you have not allowed me to answer one question, but you have explained the topic very, very well. And with the amount of time that we had, you have answered, does the Quran support ethnocentrism? And clearly it does not. And it has a much broader human identity that is important for our getting along with each other, which you just explained. Dr. Azizah, again, thank you so much for being on the Scholars Chair. I cannot thank you enough, but I hope that I'll be able to call on you in the near future.
Okay, just remember, don't be arrogant against others, okay?
Thank you, sister.
Thank you very
Assalamu
much for inviting me. I enjoyed it.
alaikum. Same here. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.